just for my information, if I could kind of get an idea, you can either give me a show of hands or you can unmute and let me know, but how many of you have worked with the insurance tab in Millennium? Most of you worked with it, haven't worked with it? How about down in Huntersville? Have you guys worked with it at all?
Not at all.
Not at all? Okay. All right. Kareem, have you worked with it?
No, I haven't.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and start here. Today's training is APA approved. So you will, if you have your FPC or CPP, you will receive 1.5 RCH credits for it. It is an interactive training, as always. Toward the end of it, we will do a group exercise, so I will ask for participation. And you will be able to speak to me, so you don't have to worry about the chat panel piece there. We're going to talk about gathering information and preparation for completing the insurance tab. We're going to talk about company setup, employee setup, and then do a group exercise. All right. Well, why use the insurance tab? The reason that the insurance tab is a very nice feature and most people like to use it is because of the fact that it is an efficient way for the employer to update annual premiums. And what I mean by that is when their open enrollment comes up every single year, they can go into the company level insurance plan and they can update that on one line item, update all the premiums, and then it flows through to the employee. So they don't have to go through each individual deduction on the employee level and update it. It makes it very quick for them. They can also use it to calculate the contributions for the employer piece of employer-provided health insurance. So that is nice for them. It'll populate on there as well as a memo. And it allows them the ability to then have the W-2 populated on 12DD if it's required. And what I mean by if it's required is currently right now, the only employers that have to have it on, display it on the W-2 are 250 employees or more. Now that could be subject to change. I do have an IRS link that I will share with everybody after this meeting, and you can check it out, but it tells you exactly who is required to report those. The other reason the insurance tab is used is for new hire reporting. You can see all the states out here. At one time, back in 2011 when this presentation was done last, there were actually 2 or 3 states that required it to be on the new hire reporting, but now there are quite a few of them. And I don't know, depending on where you're located, I don't know how familiar with any of you are with the new hire piece of it, but we're going to touch on that today. All right, well, there are 2 ways to actually set a plan up in the software. And what I've laid out here is a one plan versus multiple plans. And the one plan setup, what is nice about that is you only have one plan to set up and manage. So there isn't a lot of setup to it outside of the employee piece of it. And then when you're adding it to the employee, there actually is less room for error. And what I mean by that is you only have one selection, one option. For the multiple plans, you lay out many plans out there. So you could potentially choose the wrong one when you add it to the employee. Now, some of the reasons that people may choose the multiple plan versus the one plan is large companies could potentially spend hours on the employee dependent setup and then adding the dependents to the employee insurance tab. Now, you'll see more of what I mean here when I bump over to Millennium in a few minutes, but there is more setup on the piece for a one plan setup as far as getting it ready to function the way it was created. And on the one plan setup, you can only have one child option. So if an insurance company had premium based off one child and then it was an additional amount for a second child, you don't have that ability on a one plan setup to have multiple children. Again, you'll see that in just a few minutes. The setup and preparation on the company level is that you need to set up an employer memo. So it's just like when you set up like the 401k match, you've got that ER memo. This is actually ER, health, memo, or dental, or vision, depending on what type of plan you're setting up. You do have to set up the applicable deduction code/codes, depending. And if you're going to use it for the new hire piece, and if they have only specific employees that they provide insurance for, you would have to set up a payroll group for that. Now, you've also, on the employee level, you have to set up the dependents on the employees and the dependent tab if using the one plan option. You always will have to tag it to the insurance on the employee level. I want to make sure that everybody understands that when a company is using the insurance tab, they then use the insurance tab on the employee level. You never use the deduction tab if you're using the insurance tab for those deductions. If you do, you're going to have duplication. So again, I just want to be very clear that if you're using insurance on the company level, that you are using insurance on the employee level, not the deductions. All right, at this time, I'm going to bump over to Millennium, so give me just a moment here, and I'll flip over, and we'll pretty much be talking the rest of the time in Millennium and walking through things. I want to make sure everybody can see my screen. Can you guys let me know? Can you see my screen in Millennium right now? Huntersville, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Kareem, can you see it as well?
Yes.
Okay. Wanted to make sure. I'm actually at my desk, so I've got dual monitors up, so I always want to make sure that you can see what I'm looking at here. Okay. All righty. All right. You can see right now I'm out here at the company level, company setup insurance. So we're going to walk through a little bit about the setup piece here. Whether you're using a multiple plan, and when I say multiple, these first three right here are what we would call a multiple plan. You can see that you have a plan that's employee and child, you have a plan that's employee only, and a plan that's employee spouse. Whether I'm setting up a multiple plan or an individual, one plan, which is this option right here, Blue Cross Blue Shield Health Insurance, that's one plan, you still have to set up the plan and the ER contributions the exact same way. There's no difference in them. On this first screen here is the description of the plan. You have a start date and an end date. I know there are companies who may say to you, well, when open enrollment comes along, I would like to be able to see what I had last year in my premium, so maybe I want to set up a new plan each year. I would strongly probably discourage that. I would say that that's the whole purpose of using the insurance tab, that you can just come in and update the premium, and then it flows down to everybody, so you can update it every year. If they really want to know what their premium amounts were for each year, they could create a report writer that they would be able to pull off the C insurance and the E insurance tabs on the employees to see those prior to changing them. You're also going to see an employee history. You're going to see that information in there as well, so you would be able to see what the premiums were. And most of the time, their insurance provider, they would be able to refer back to that if they really needed that information. All right, the insurance type here, you can see you have multiple options. Obviously, you just select the one that's applicable. I do want to make a point to say that if they are using the new hire reporting, it's important that you make sure you have the health tagged to health. If you accidentally tagged it to dental, it would not display on the new hire reporting as them having the eligibility of health insurance. The policy number is informational, so it's not a requirement. And majority of the time you are going to select COBRA, but they would be able to tell you if COBRA is offered. And you do need to select the S-125 qualified if it is a Section 125. And the reason you need to check this box is that it does work in conjunction with the option on the next tab here that I'm going to go to. Now in the next tab, the EEER contribution setup. You see you have two options right here. You have your DED code and your 125 DED code. This works in conjunction with this right here. So you want to make sure, again, that you select that. Now, you would never have these two selected at the same time for a plan. It's either going to be a 125 pre-tax or it's going to be a after-tax. So depending on what it is, which the majority of the time, most of your health insurance are 125 pre-tax, This is the code that you're going to be using. Your ER contribution is the memo that you set up at the company level. So you would just select the one that's applicable. Your DED frequency tells the deduction how often this is going to happen. So most of the time you will see people set this up for equal, which is monthly premium / pay periods in the month. So the system knows to look at the pay periods in the month and equally distribute it. However, there are other options out here. They can just have it all on the first of the month or last of the month, and then biweekly depending. Most of the time, again, I do see the equal to. The premium calc option out here, it is just defaulted to fixed amount based on the premium table. The other selection here, the S, the premium times annual salary, that is not supported at this time. Now, originally when this insurance enhancement was added to Millennium, it was added for one of our licensees that had a very large client that wanted the ability to have an insurance function. And so it was designed specifically for that licensee's client. That could have been something at one time that they thought that they would roll out, but it currently right now is not supported. The age code becomes important in the event that you have different premium levels based on age. So you could have a company that begins to give a break in premium when employees reach a certain age. If that is the case, then you could select this age code, and it would look at the employee's birthday versus check date or hire date versus check date. Most of the time, it is going to just say to the age, length of service, not applicable. You're not going to be using it. Now, this employer contribution piece right down here, this becomes important when you're setting up what the employer contribution is going to be. Most of the time, you maybe will see 50, 80. Seldom will you probably see 100% here. But at this point, what you're telling the system is the employer is going to contribute 100% of the total premium amount up to $500 a month. These two areas right here always have to be populated. Again, most of the time you are always going to have an employer that's contributing something. Even if it's 50%, they're usually contributing something in here. Now, this last item here, total employer contributions to all insurance benefits shall not exceed, and the amount here. This currently right now is not supported and not functioning. I believe it was designed at some point. The thought would be that it could look at every plan that was created out here for a company. So, for instance, if an employer had an insurance plan, a dental plan, a vision plan, that you would be able to put a number in here and say, looking at all the plans together, that employer, his match, his amount that he contributes is not going to exceed this amount, and the system would stop it. However, I do want to say again, it currently is not supported. So you don't really need anything here. It's not going to hurt if you do because it's not going to do anything. All right, so again, whether you're setting up the multiple plans, the first three up here, or the single plan, your first two tabs should be identical. The difference with these two plans lies in the third tab, which is the premium tab. If you're setting up a one-plan option, which I do want to say that is the way that the system was designed to work, to set it up as a one-plan option, then you will enter premium exactly like this down here. So you'll receive information from the employer, the client, and it will tell you the total premium that they're charging that employer for employees, for employee spouse, for child, and for family. You will enter each one of the amounts in these fields right here. If you're setting up a multiple plan, the amount for employee child is always entered in the employee field here. So you could not enter it in the child. It won't pull from there on a multi-plan. It will only pull from entered premium on the employee field right here. So each premium that you have, depending on what your plan says, like this is employee child, you would enter 600. You would look at your plan. If it's employee only, you would enter 400. Employee spouse, the 500. So that's the big difference between setting up a multiple plan and a single plan. as far as the premiums. It's very important that you understand that because it will not pull in if you fill in any of these fields on a multi-level type plan. And basically, again, that's just because this isn't how it was designed. It was really designed to function as a one-plan setup. And I believe what more than likely my guess is that what happened is the one plan wouldn't work for clients, and so people began to experiment and figure out workarounds, and that's where multiple plans came into play. Now, before I move on any further, we are going to take a look at going to the other steps as well. But before I do that, any questions? Does anybody have anything they want to ask me? Or? No questions? Okay, we'll move on. All right, so before I cover the last three here, I want to show you a little bit about what I'm talking about as far as your understanding the one plan versus the multiple plans. When you set up one plan, you have to then set up, you're required to complete some other setups in the system. And those other setups is that you have to go to the employee then, and we're going to go into Mr. Sherman Potter here, and you have to set up dependents for that employee. You have to enter the information here, and then it's very important that down here you tag them to the applicable relationship. You cannot add to these. These are hard-coded behind the system. There's nowhere in miscellaneous or anywhere where you can add some more out here. They are what they are, which are child, spouse, and other. You have to add every applicable dependent. And then once those are added, you then have to click on the Insurance tab on the employee. You have to add the one-time, and remember this is my one-time plan, one-time setup plan. And then you have to click on this tab here, and then you have to add the dependent. So I have to come out here then and add Colton, the child, and add the spouse. Now, you'll notice up at the top, you'll see that the plan says right now it's currently on the employee. It's an employee plan. So that's the premium that it would pull based on what I entered at the company level. As soon as I add these other two, I want you to watch and see what this is going to do. Now I have the child, and now I'm going to add Linda. And then let me refresh here. And you can now see that it shows the plan is family. And what that tells the system is now go look at the amount I entered in family and pull that premium in. This is the way it was all designed to work. Again, you got to set up dependent, and you have to come in and set up the insurance and also tag dependents to the insurance. Now, if this employee just had employee only, you wouldn't tag any dependents. It would just be the employee premium amount. When you add this at the employee level, so when I come out here, if I were going to click here, and now we're going to add a new insurance plan, let me just go ahead and add this one here. You'll see these boxes come in automatically checked. So it automatically checks deduct from paycheck and section 125. You also have the ability here at the employee level, just like you do in accruals, to override. So if you have a situation where an employer is going to make an exception, maybe for some executives in the company, maybe the executive, they are allowed to, the employer is going to contribute a little bit more for them. Maybe the company is overall it's 80%, but for the execs, they're going to do 100% up to a different amount. You can change this in here. That you also have the ability to override the premium. So if the premium is different for the executive, you can override it at this level, which is really a nice feature. And it's important to remember that because you could have a situation where they do have some exceptions to that. And instead of setting up an individual plan for that, again, you can override it at the employee level. All right. Now the difference is, now remember, again, this is one plan setup, one plan option. Got to add dependents, got to go into the insurance tab, and enter the covered dependents on the sub-tab. If you are just using one plan, or I'm sorry, multiple plans, then all you have to do is come out here and add that to the employee. You're not going to add dependents. You're not going to add sub-dependents, or dependents under the sub-tab, I'm sorry. You're not going to do any of that piece. As a matter of fact, if you're using the multiple plans, you don't want to add dependents. you could mess up the way that it functions. All right, I'm going to open it up for a few minutes and just kind of ask some, see if anybody has any questions. Are you guys all still awake?
Still here.
Still there? Okay.
Still here.
So any questions? Because I know that I'm kind of throwing a lot out there. So do you have any questions, anything that you can think of? Does it make sense what I'm saying to you? Do you understand the function of the insurance tab so far?
I guess my question is, why would anybody go through using the insurance tab? The deduction tab seems so much more straightforward. I mean, there's a lot of setup involved with this tab. So what are, besides,
Well,
once you get it all set up, the way it works through, why would you use this as your first option?
Well, I always try to encourage people to use it because of the fact that during open enrollment, there's a lot of work involved if you have to go change deduction amounts for every employee versus once you've got this set up. Now realize you're going to do the same thing if you set up a deduction, you go tag it to every employee, right? And now open enrollment, you have to go change all those amounts because they're not standard across the deduction itself. Now, if they were one amount across the deduction, then that would be pretty easy as well because you could set it up at the company level, right? But they're not. Generally, they're different. So once you set up the insurance piece, you just go change the premium amount. You're done. So it's very quick once you have it set up and the open enrollment piece. Plus, now that you're required, a lot of people are required to report employer cost of health insurance. They can use the insurance tab for that feature as well. Where if they're not going to do that, now you got to go set up a memo, earning memo, and what are you going to use, the Fringe tab maybe to plug that amount in? So that's the reason that the insurance tab is used for the most part.
Okay. And then I guess my second question is, I have a lot of clients who change plans from year to year. Don't ask me why, but they jump from Blue Cross to, whoever, trying to get the lowest rates for their employees. Once you set up plans in there, do you delete old plans off? How would you go about making sure that old information isn't in there? Is it just that simple? You just delete it off once they stop using that carrier?
Well, you know what? And that brings up a really good point, and I'm glad you asked that, actually, because I do see people out here name this code like Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I would recommend staying away from that because of that reason. I would recommend entering these codes as health insurance, health, dental. I'd keep it very, very straightforward and just generic more so that when the next year comes and let's say they do go from Blue Cross to United Healthcare, all I'm going to do is come on here to the premium and change my premium amounts based on United versus Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's all I'm going to do.
Okay.
If they want a paper trail of what this was the year before, they should be able to get that from their carrier. But again, they could create a report writer. You could create a report writer out here for them that would pull off of this tab here, and it'd be available to them. So if they really needed to know, they could see it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? No other questions? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to take a look at a couple employees that have this set up on them. And open the payroll up here. All right, so you can see how we have this set up right now on Sherman Potter. And he is actually employee. And you can see his amount is the employee amount of premium. Let's take a look. Let's go to company. Our employee premium is $400. We're telling the system that the employer is going to contribute 100% up to $500. And let's just see exactly what he has on him. He actually has family on him. I just remembered that. Because I believe he's the one that we were messing with. Let me just check. Yep, he has family. All right. So he has family, which family is $700, correct? And the employer is going to stop at $500. So let's see what the system did. All right. So he's paid weekly. You can see his frequency is weekly right here. I do want to make a note and make sure that everyone understands it does look at this frequency. So on their rates and review tab, whatever their pay frequency is, it's going to make that calculation off of that. So you could have a situation where you have employees who are paid weekly, employees who are paid biweekly. It's going to be different, the amount that it calculates, because of that pay frequency. It doesn't look at the company level, looks at the employee level. You can see right here, he's supposed to be $700 a month. So if you look at it, he is 125 times 4 would be 500, and then 50 is what he's paying, times 4 would be 200, which is 700 total. Now, you see right here, 125, the company's 100% up to 500. So 125 times 4 is 500. It stops there. If I were to go put on Sherman, let's go to his insurance tab, and let's put 100% up to 700. And we'll go back to Mr. Potter here. And you can now see the employer's paying it all. He's not paying anything. So 175 times 4 is $700. All right, let's look at Mr. Michael Scott here. Michael is paid weekly as well. He is spouse. He is the individual plan. And spouse is 500, and 125 times 4 is 500. Again, he is not paying anything because the company is going to pay 100% up to the $500. Most of the time, probably an employer is not going to pay 100% just for the simplicity of being able to see these quickly in here. That's the way I made it. But a lot of times, you're probably going to see 80 or 70. All right, we have Benjamin here, and he has child. And so child, I believe, was 600. You can see right here, 125 the employer pays, 500. Employees paying 25, that takes you to 600. Now, if we have this is interesting because it's something I was going to show you guys too. I don't know if you've had situations where you're getting this error, and this is the error right here, because of an employer is setting up the insurance on payentry.com. And when you go out to payentry.com, I'm going to get off of this employee because we were messing with this yesterday afternoon. When you go add the insurance field to an employee in M3, and I'll go ahead and show you that now. So I go to the insurance tab, and let's go to Mr. Brad Pitt. If I add this, the minute I add the plan, these populate, correct? If I go add this in payentry.com, if you give me a moment, I'm going to log in there. Just a second. There's my demo here. I want you to see this because it's important to understand, and that error is what, and the reason that that error presents itself here. All right, again, you noticed in M3 when I added that, it checked both those boxes. If I come out to pay entry, let me go to Joseph here. And he has no insurance currently on him. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this is the child, and click the add. And then I'm going to click the details here. And now you see out here, it does not automatically select this box. There are issues sometimes when it's set up on pay entry, when it comes over to Millennium, it can cause that error that we're seeing on Katie right now, Catherine. So I always make sure that individuals, when they come out here, that if they're going to mess with the insurance tab in payentry.com and they're going to add it to an employee, if it is a 125 plan, just make sure you come out here and check the box that it's a 125 and save changes. I would think at some point in the future we do need to make sure, I know it is in development, to update this so that when it is added on payentry.com, it duplicates the same way it is added in Millennium. Let me save those changes. Now I'm going to bump back into Millennium here. Everybody see my screen back in Millennium again? Let me know if you cannot. Now I'm going to show you something else that happens as well. Sometimes you'll have an employer that will come out here, and when they're setting this up, they'll add both. So they'll add another code to this as well. They'll put it in both fields here. So when you go to add it on the employee, let's go down to Brad here. Let me remove it and add it. And I'm going to choose the one plan. It's going to pop up a message box for me, a warning box that says, the insurance plan can be set up to use a Section 125 eligible deduction or non-Section 125. Do you want to use a Section 25? And if I say yes, it's going to check the box for me. And if you see that message, I want you to understand that the only reason that message comes up is because they've set up both on the plan itself, both deduction types. Shouldn't have them. That should be an instant warning to you to say, wait a minute, it shouldn't ask me that question, so I really need to go look at the company setup out here and check that out and see what the deal is. And you are going to see both of these. Shouldn't be the case. It should be one or the other. Come out here, remove it, and then if you go to add it to an employee, you will then see that it doesn't even ask you that question. Automatically makes the assumption. Obviously, it's a 125. That's what you said. Now, are there any questions with any of that before we move into doing an exercise together? We're going to do a couple setups here. So any questions before we start that? No questions? All right. So you know what my next question is to you guys, right? Who wants to participate? So what we're going to do, you should have your presentation in front of you, and you will see toward the very back of that there is an exercise in there, a group activity. So how about what we do, why don't we go through and why don't we let Huntersville, and I don't care who does it down there, you guys can work as a team, but somebody has to drive. We're going to have you guys go through and do the one plan. We're going to do a one plan setup. You can see in there where I kind of lay it out, and then if you have any questions, we'll go through it together, all right? So who would like to drive down there? You guys want to pick a number between?
Elliot is going to drive.
Elliot's going to drive? All right. I'm going to have to make Katie, obviously, I'm going to make you the presenter, okay? Actually, I'm just going to give you keyboard and mouse. That's all you need. So you'll be on my screen. You have keyboard and mouse. All right. So we're going to do this on company Z9202. If you scroll down a little bit, Elliot, you should see that company down. Just there you go. It's right below it.
Sure.
All right. Yep. All right. Now, just keep in mind, remember that before you would even go add the insurance plans, you would have to go make sure that there is an employer earning and a deduction. So let's just go verify that the earning and the deduction is already set up on this company. We have our deductions, okay, and they are 125. And we have our earnings. I do like to make sure that we stay kind of consistent with our earnings as far as our ER earnings, just like we do our matches and do the ER in front of it, health, ER, dental, whatever the plan is. So that's good. Now at this point, our next step is insurance. So we're going to set up our plan. So let's work through this as a group. I'm going to try not to give feedback here so that you guys can help Elliot.
All right. Oh. Start with H. It's not taking a while.
Accepting the capital. We'll just call this insurance. Oh.
All right. Insurance.
Cobra,
Yeah. Cobra and 125.
oh,
Chicken. Policy number's not required, but
yes,
you can make one up.
is that right?
And then the 125 deduction code here. Yep. Yeah, currency by the employer will match. Equal. Right? It doesn't say. So usually 80%. 400. Oh, I like
Very good. Okay, so very good. Now, keep in mind, if we had age, I didn't make any age distinction here, but if you did, you would add separate, more line items if it was based on, like, it changed as far as age.
Use 400, 500, 700.
Oh, wait, is that right?
40.
No kids.
Okay. See?
And then go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, good.
I was just going to say your next tab's here. Go ahead and click on that one for me.
This one?
Mm-hmm. This is informational. A lot of times this is where you'll see people put the insurance carrier, so you can come out here and put, Blue Cross Blue Shield. The next one is agent, where sometimes people track the agent. Again, totally informational. And the last tab here, the eligibility here, is used for the new hire reporting piece. So if you were setting up using the insurance tab strictly for the new hire reporting function, you would add some code out here, and you could call it new hire if you want, and you would use this tab only. And it allows you to set up a payroll group if only certain employees are eligible for the insurance. And then it gives you different eligibility models. These models were determined by different states. So those were created strictly for that. So depending on what state you're in, what the employer is required to do, what the employer is required as far as the eligibility and stuff, this becomes what you populate on the new hire piece. So this will be reported on the new hire reporting. We're not going to do anything with this today, but I just want you to understand that that's the purpose of that individual tab in the insurance. So if all you're doing is setting up insurance plans, you're not going to use that tab at all. All right, so you've got your one plan option all set up as far as on the employer company level. what's your next step?
Employee, employee.
Yep, we got to go to employee, and what do we have to set up there? We're going to use the first 4 employees.
Kids.
Oh yeah, do we know, is it just the employee?
Yep, Monica's just the employee, so does she have any dependents?
No. No.
Okay. All right. So who's our next one? Let's go to Chandler. He's employee spouse.
Okay.
Okay. Now, he's employee spouse, so you have to add some dependents out here for him if he needs them.
Yeah, are we supposed to have that information?
You would add it here if, yeah, I mean, you have to have that in here for the one plan, so the dependent needs to be added. So remember, you have to add the dependents before you go add the insurance piece of it. So you have to go to each employee and create their dependents out here.
Oh, before.
Remember that piece? So, and that's fine. You could have left that there, but it's fine. You would have to come back and tag them. So that's why I always say, go do the dependents on the employee, then go to the insurance, add the dependent. So let's go create his spouse out here. We got to add his spouse.
All right.
And you're just going to make it up. I didn't put it in here. You can give her whatever name you'd like.
I'll just keep it share related.
But then she's an employee.
Huh?
Doesn't matter. I don't know, whatever. Monica Baines.
I'm trying to keep it to the script, okay?
Might as well.
And you don't have to fill in any of that, Elliot. You can just go down and tag the relationship, because we're not going to do that. Perfect. Hit your refresh. F11, F5, whatever is easier for you.
Yeah. Okay.
There she is. And so now once you hit refresh, watch what happens to your plan up there.
Oh,
There you
great.
go. All right, so your next employee, Rachel, she has a child spouse.
Got her dependent.
There we go.
Alex Green.
That wasn't her kid's name in the show?
Yeah.
First name, go.
Alex. Alexander.
I'll spell that.
H. Alex Herber. Oh, this is her spouse.
No.
No. Spouse. Oh.
So did Rachel have, what did Rachel have, a spouse and a child?
Where's this information? We just have the company set up.
Yeah, down, I'm just reading it to you.
Oh, okay.
I have it in my notes. Sorry, guys. I have it in my notes.
So we need to add a
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, you need to add a spouse
dude
there.
as
I
well.
apologize.
Jim Green, Jay.
Jim Green.
Jim.
James Green.
And Jim. There. All right.
All right, and then our last employee, number 4.
You have to give her the insurance first.
Oh, no.
Just okay.
Okay. Good call.
Thanks.
You have to hit refresh. Okay, so you notice hers changed to family, right?
Yep.
Spouse tab. Okay. And the last one is just child.
Just a kid. All right.
Just a child.
So she had triplets.
For her brother. Calvin.
Sure.
Oh,
Don't worry about the spelling and stuff. I'm going to be deleting this out of here anyway. So
Calvin Hebrew. Brother.
Better make sure their license correct. They won't be able to take tests.
All right. They need to start going by their government name.
You're right.
All right, Calvin.
okay, so it looks like we've got it all set up, right? We added it at the company level. We went and added all the dependents. We went and added all the insurance, and then tagged the dependents within that. So now let's just go to the payroll and see if it's working correctly. Now, let's remember what these people are so we don't have to keep bumping back. So we've got Phoebe is child, right?
Yes.
And Monica, number 1, Monica was just employee, is that correct?
Yes.
And who was next? Chandler.
Had a wife.
He had just had a spouse, right? And then Rachel had both, right? Is she family? Okay. All right, let's go look at them then. All right, so Monica was just employee. And how much is our employee's premium?
400.
400, right. And what's the maximum the employer is going to pay?
80% up to 400.
That's right. So up to 400, right? The maximum they're going to pay is 400, 80% of that. Does this look correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely does. Perfect. All right, let's move on to checking on Chandler.
Or bomb.
All right, and he was the spouse. How much is our spouse? Spouse is 500, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, self is 500. They're covering 100. Yep.
And you see that the employer's only doing 100, right? Because it's up to 400. So you can take 100 times 4 weeks. It's 400. Okay, let's go to Rachel. Rachel's supposed to be our family. Does that look correct? That is, how much is family?
700.
You see something different looking with Rachel? Does the premium look right there?
Mine was 200 for.
Looks a little high, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Look up at her snapshot on her page right there, and look at her pay frequency. You see where she is set to semi-weekly? Yep, she is set to semi-monthly. So based off of that, is her premium correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Exactly. So I want to point out that they could have a different frequency. They're going to be in a different batch, but they could have a different frequency, which would make their calculation different. So if you have that scenario, I always advise go through when you set a plan up for the first time and check out each one of your different levels. So check out your employees calculating right, and your spouse, and your child, and your family. And then if you have some different pay frequencies in there, just check those out. You don't have to check out every employee, but at least check out each of the different levels. All right, and your last employee is Phoebe, right? And she has just a child, and it's not working. So let's go look at her. Let's go take a look at the interns at the company level and see if we can. Let's go try to see if we can.
There's no child insurance for children.
You're right. Very good. Very good. Okay, so let's go back to the company level.
Company setup.
And let's go to our premiums. Yep, let's take a look at that. And there isn't one for child. There isn't one strictly just for employee child. So in that situation, they would have to tell you what it was, or you're going to make the assumption it's just it falls under family. Or so in this situation, let's go ahead and fill an amount in. Let's say there was $600. Let's just do $600. So you'd have to follow up with them and say what exactly needs to be in there. How does the plan calculate the premium? All right. I'll go back and check her. And now does she look correct?
Yes.
Again, it stopped at 400, right? But she's making up the difference to bring it to 600. So you can see her total premium should be 600. She is paid weekly. That looks good. All right. Any questions from anybody with that? I know that it looks like there's a lot of setup on it, and if there's a small company that doesn't take as much work as if there's a large company. So that's one of the reasons sometimes when you have a very large company that they may choose to do the next option we're going to do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through and we're going to set up a multi-level. We're going to set up multi-level plans, and we're going to see how you set those up and how you tag those to the employees. So that's a little bit quicker. Who would like to take over and drive? Would you want to try it, Kareem?
Sure.
All right, let me take control back. Let me give you keyboard and mouse. Thank you, Elliot, Katie, Latasha. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, you should have control now. So we're going to set up multiple. Let's go back to the company. We're going to use the same information that we used to set up the one plan. So it looks like we have an employee only, employee spouse, and employee family. So in this situation, you're going to, start your ad. And in here, I'd probably just put health EE, health ES, and health maybe family. However you want to say it, but you're going to have to set up 3 here.
Okay. Oops.
Just hit your F11 or refresh. Okay, let's just use the next 4 employees to add the plan to. So we'll just go to the next 4 in line. Yep. And just give the first 1 employee. Okay. The next one we'll give spouse. Now remember, you don't have to add any dependents here on this piece here because you're doing it multiple plans, so you don't. That's
Gotcha.
We'll just do employee spouse. Yep. Then the next one we'll do just do family. That's fine. And then we'll just do 3. Fine, that's fine. Okay. Now, so you added the multiple plans. You added 3 plans. You added them to the employee. You don't do the dependents. You don't have to do the sub piece because you're not using the one plan and you're not kind of doing more of a workaround of the way it was designed to work. So now let's go to each employee and see if it calculates correctly for us. All right, so Joey was first. And he is strictly employee, correct?
Right.
So his premium should be $400 a month. Does it look right?
Yep.
Yep. He looks good. Okay, let's go to the next individual. Now, Ross isn't calculating. And his premium, I believe he is employee or spouse, isn't he? Does anybody have any idea why he's not calculating? Let's go look and see if he's got it on him. He does. Okay, and remember, when you're setting up multiple plans, yep, at the company level, so he's employee. That looks good. Change the percent. All of them are up to 400 though, so make sure you change the 80%. There you go. And then just keep in mind, remember, it doesn't hurt that you put that in there, but you don't have to because that's not even functioning anyway. That's not supported, that total number.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so remember when you're setting up multiple plans that every premium has to be put in the employee field. It can't be put in the other three fields because it doesn't know to recognize those fields. So the premium for this one, on the premium tab there, the 500 needs moved over to the employee. Everything's going to pull from the employee.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everybody? You don't use those other fields because you're not using the insurance plan the way it was created to function. You're doing it outside of it. You're setting it up a different way. Very good. Okay, so now let's go check and see if he looks correct. Now he looks good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how about Benjamin? Was he family? I can't remember. Was he family?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's family, which is $700, but we're only going up to $400 for the employer. So does that look right for him?
No.
No, let's go back and take a look and see. All right, let's go check him out now. That looks better, doesn't it?
Yep.
All right, so stopped at the $400 for the employer, but he has $700, so it is making up the difference, and that is another $300 that he'll have to pay. All right, thank you very much, Kareem.
Uh-huh.
All right, I'm going to take control back here for a second. Before I go back to the PowerPoint presentation, any questions here in Millennium, anything I can look at with you? Can I touch on anything again? I want to make sure that you really understand the whole purpose of the insurance tab, why it was designed, the functionality of it to work with the one plan, the dependents, the insurance, the sub tab within there for dependents, but you can set up multiple because you see that quite a bit on companies. And then you remember your premiums only stand under the employee piece. These only function with the dependents tied to them. Any questions on any of it? No questions? All right, I'm going to bump over here back to the PowerPoint and just touch on the resources for a minute. Can everybody see my screen right now? All right. There are a couple areas in Web Help. There is a task sheet that you can find on how to set up insurance. It is a one-page document. It just kind of is a more summary format. And then you would be able to find the actual article through Millennium 3 company maintenance, company setup. We will be updating it with some information in there. It is right now just more at the employer higher level, not necessarily tagging to the employee and stuff. So there will be some updates to this article soon. I do want to just make sure that, in summary, I want to talk about the whole purpose of the insurance plan in Millennium. It really was designed to make renewal time much easier for an employer, that they didn't have to go update all deductions on a lot of their employees. It also allows for the functionality of being able to report the employer cost of insurance. That was an added bonus when the government decided to start requiring that. It is used to report new hire, meet the requirements for some state new hire reporting to be able to determine if an employee is eligible for insurance. And the multiple options allows the employer a quick setup. As opposed to the one plan option, there is a lot of setup involved. And when you have a large company, they may not want to go through all those steps. So if they only had 2 plans and it was easier to just set up the 2 plans, not worry about the dependent piece of stuff, that may be an option for them. So they definitely have more than one option. And that just becomes your discretion once you, for you to review with them, once you see how many employees they have, how difficult their plans are. All right. Well, any questions before we exit the training today? Anything I can answer for anybody?